You're listening to On the Job with PORAC, hosted by PORAC President Brian Marvel and Vice President Ben Therriault. On the Job with PORAC is your go-to podcast for insights into the challenges and opportunities facing law enforcement professionals here in California and across the nation. Our goal is to provide an inside look at these issues from the perspective of officers who risk their lives to protect and serve their communities.
Welcome to On the Job with PORAC. I'm Brian Marvel, President of the Peace Officers Research Association of California, joined by our Vice President, Ben Therriault. More than a decade after PEPRA took effect, California's public safety agencies are paying the price. Two officers doing the same job, same department, same risks, yet one walks away with a classic pension and the other's locked into a weaker formula. Higher retirement age and half the cost of their own benefits. The result? Record vacancies, skeleton crews, skyrocketing overtime, and slower response times for the communities we swore to protect. Today we're sitting down with PORAC legislative advocate Randy Perry of Perry Strategies to unpack the hard data in our new report, the PEPRA Problem, and to walk through AB 1383, the common sense, fiscally responsible modernization that finally gives agencies the tools they need to recruit and retain the next generation of officers. This is the conversation every law enforcement officer professional, every city elected leader, and every legislator needs to hear. So let's chat about that. Why don't we originally start with PEPRA? I think it's about 13 years old now.
14, coming up on 14 years.
Yep, coming on 14. So what exactly did PEPRA do to change the system?
So PEPRA is a Public Employee Pension Reform Act, and it came about, PORAC with the firefighter group and the Highway Patrol sponsored SB 400 in 1998-99, and that gave the option for local governments, local agencies, and state agencies to negotiate higher retirement formulas. Those were in effect for many years, and then Governor Jerry Brown came back, and before he left, he said he wanted to renegotiate those formulas and everything else tied to them, whether the employer can pick up part of it, put caps on how much you can actually earn, et cetera. So there was a lot more to it than just the formulas themselves. We were in negotiations, like I said, with firefighters, PORAC, Highway Patrol, SEIU, AFSCME, so the other larger unions were at the table at the time. And then we negotiated PEPRA.
Yeah, that was a pretty bitterly fought bill that ultimately made it through and got the governor's signature on it. But here we are 14 years later, and we're running AB 1383 with the CAL FIRE guys. And, it's one of those things where you have obviously you have this SB 400 from 98-99 changed the way people can negotiate pensions. Clearly there was some, issues with the underfunding. The pension system was not being funded as it should be, which for a variety of reasons. And obviously being from San Diego, I've dealt with it firsthand for pension system running into issues. The governor feels that he has to run this PEPRA to rein these reforms in. 14 years later, now we're dealing with a recruiting and retention issue. And like I started out with my, intro, it's hampering our ability to effectively recruit and retain people because you have these two categories of people that will eventually be annuitants. I look at S 1383 as being allowing folks to be able to now go to the bargaining table to negotiate a retirement benefit that fits the local agency, to be able to help in the recruiting area and also try to retain some of the people that they do have. And I don't think this process has been easy. It's been a lot of work in trying to connect with members. Because obviously somebody who sat on the negotiating table, when you start to have the two systems where one becomes greater than the other, they start negotiating away benefits from the group that's smaller. and that creates a problem within an organization too. So where are we with 1383 then?
Well, I think that the real issue has become that when you look at the safety formulas, they're better than miscellaneous employees, right? But not a whole lot better. So when you're thinking about what the job of a peace officer or a firefighter is, and that you're barely getting anything more at the end than somebody, I'm not saying that, it's a better job or that there's anything negative about miscellaneous employees at all. What I'm talking about is the dangers of this job, and you're not getting compensated with the appropriate pension for the dangers of that job versus a miscellaneous employee who may not face those dangers. That is, I think, the rub that is occurring. Also, when you have the caps, we have a lot of people starting to hit up against the caps. And that's a problem because now you're basically working for free. So not only are you doing a tougher job, but now you're doing a tougher job without any incremental increase to that. We do get a COLA, but it's not. We're surpassing a COLA. So let me talk about what 13A3 does. So 13A3 does three things. It increases the caps or lowers the retirement age, let's more accurate, for public safety, okay? Not for miscellaneous, but for public safety. The current formulas that we have now that are 2% at 57, 2.5 at 57, and 2.7 at 57 all go to age 55. Then we also add a formula, and those are prospective. So those take effect in January. So someone who is a PEPRA employee would, starting in January, now have a formula down at age 55. So what they'd do is they'd meld those two formulas and determine what that formula is when they retire out at 55. So it's prospective only. If you look at SB 400, that was retroactive. So if you had 20 years in when we passed SB 400 and you now went to the new 3% of 50, all 20 years that you had already put in was at 3% of 50. So it was a great deal. The argument against that was unfunded liability because you had been paying for 2% at 50 if you were in the Highway Patrol formula. So we're not doing that. We're making it prospective. We're just literally dropping the age to 55. The other thing we're doing on the formulas is we're adding a formula of 3% at 55 that can be negotiated, but it's with a 90% cap. So that is a fourth formula that we have in the bill that can be negotiated. The other thing about the formulas is under PEPRA, you could not negotiate up to a better formula, even if it was a formula, if it one of the three that I just mentioned. If you were at 2% at 57, you could not, PEPRA does not allow you to negotiate to 2.5 or 2.7 at 57, which is ridiculous. If your city is fully funded or even super funded above their 100%, which cities are. There are some cities that they can't give you that benefit under PEPRA. Our bill would say, no, you can, within the new formulas that we create here, you can negotiate up. So we take that out. So that's an important piece that, is not a big part that people don't talk about in the bill, but that's an important piece to our members. The one thing that you brought up opposition. The opposition keeps mentioning we're going back to SB 400.
Yeah.
We're not going back to SB 400. I'll be honest with you, we're just calling this PEPRA 2.0.
Yep.
You have to go back and revisit any law, not just benefits, not just any law. You need to go back and revisit it after a decade or so. You need to, just to see, especially when it's major reform. You have to look at, did it work? Is it working? What's not working? Let's fix it and make it work better. Let's take something away because maybe that's harming the original intent of the law. So there's healthy. They're bringing up, it's only been 13, 14 years. We haven't seen enough people go through the process yet and start retiring out who are PEPRA employees. It's not accurate. We need to go back and because people are definitely hitting the caps. That's the second piece of our bill. We increase the caps that were placed by PEPRA. We tie them to the federal numbers. Now remember, some of our members are tied to Social Security, so they already get some federal dollars. That cap is a little bit lower. People who are not in Social Security, their cap is higher. Those numbers are, if you're in Social Security, we go from $159,773 a year to 184.5. If you're not in Social Security, we go from 191 to basically 250. So we increase those caps because we're hitting those caps now. So there's a cost to that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you want to talk about the cost, we can do that.
No, I mean, I think the caps are reasonable. I think bringing it up to the federal standards is where we probably should have did back with PEPRA, so we wouldn't have to be dealing with this issue today. But, the thing that we have to realize too is when it comes to policing and firefighting, the age is an issue, because some of the stuff that never gets costed out in all of this is workers' compensation. Because officers are having to work longer, more susceptible to injuries. I'm assuming it's the same for the fire department. So you never get that off balance. You get this huge expense associated with AB 1383, but it's never like, hey, you know what? There's going to be some changes or offsets because there won't be as many workers' compensation claims. People will be retiring at that age.
Overtime costs.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
the whole thing, because you're shorthanded.
And the staffing's a big problem.
Yeah. I mean, there's some real truth telling that needs to be done in all this. The PEPRA has not been good for public safety, public employees, period. And just a lot of this stuff comes from the Reason folks, from the libertarian type people who hate public employees and pensions. It's just, that's the bottom line. And some groups are using some of their talking points, that are inaccurate, as a jumping off point for their position. But the bottom line is the media, not individual. They're very good individual elected officials who have seen what the issues are, seen our staffing issues, but collectively as a whole, the political body and establishment, whether it's on the local level or it's on the state level, has not done a good enough job of trying to ensure that we take care of our recruiting and retention crisis. And that's exactly what this is. Who wants some, 50 some odd year old, and again, it's not hating on anyone who's over 50 in this room, but it's like, you do not want it's a young person's game. Both of these jobs are. It's not for some, black and white haired person to come up out of a black and white car. It's just not designed for that. It really isn't. And so there needs to be some reality checking on who does this job, how long they can do this job, because it's not built for people to do. It's a very taxing job. And to Brian's point, I mean, no one wants to talk about the workers' compensation, the costs on the medical end that comes forward, and it's a serious piece of the conversation. And this is just, really, this is correcting of some very few minute details. This is not anything really significant. It allows for some negotiation and changing the formulas. That's small, and locally, it's not a state-funded mandate. And then the caps is, it's just simple math. Over time, people's salaries have gone up because of negotiating at a local level, and then all of a sudden they're not going to be able to get those salaries in retirement. Well, who's going to stick around for that?
Right.
No one's going to stick around for that, dummies. So that's why they're going to leave. And it's just, again, it's like, instead of trying to address the problems, people just want to go back up. We'll put our collective heads back into the sand, and we don't have to deal with it. So it's high time for some changes to come and to, again, tweak and make this, kind of a PEPRA 2.0, as you've mentioned, and make that into effect. And that's what this is.
Yeah, I mean, can we talk about the costs real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what they're throwing out there. Local governments are saying, oh, this is the biggest cost impact to our cities and counties that's ever happened since SB 400. It's ridiculous. Yeah. CalPERS did a full study. They said that if you implement 1383 as is, full implementation, they're talking about first-year costs of about $282 million. Keep in mind, since PEPRA, the employee pays half of that. So you're talking $141 million paid for by over 3,000 agencies who are in CalPERS. Yeah. If you just now, they're different costs, right? Some have 10 employees, some have 10,000. So the cost will be different. But if you just took the 3,000, and there's a few more than 3,000. If you just took 3,000 and took that 141 million, that's 47 grand
a year
per agency
a year
for the first year. And it starts becoming less after that. But the first year impact, with all this being immediately implemented, 47 grand.
Yeah.
So give me a break. Even the smallest agencies can afford 47 grand to try and get and keep and recruit members and peace officers and firefighters.
It's the anti-pensioners. They look at the funding status. Like say CalPERS, I think they're at like $680 billion, and they're 85% funded. And they'll run around and be like, see, there's this huge underfunding, but it's like, they lead you to believe that CalPERS owes all of that this year. They have to pay the full pension, and it's like pension's based on a lifetime. It's based over many, many years. It's not all in one lump sum at any one time.
It's not the exact equal thing, but I'm like, I don't pay my mortgage. I'm not paying all my mortgage.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, and then I'm not paying for someone else to live in it either, long term. But it just goes to say that it's like this is not something that's due today. And CalPERS just had a banner year. Yeah, I hear any of these people say a peep. They hear shit for these people. There's nothing, but they had a banner year. They're some of the best funding that they've ever been in.
Yeah, 85%.
And even if it was 100%, they still have some crocodile tears for something and be like, oh, well, what if something happens? I guarantee that would be the next thing out of their mouth.
I'll tell you, any pension fund I can tell you around the country would love to be funded as large and at 85%.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that pension systems across the United States have really recognized over the last 25 years with all the pension stuff is making sure that people are paying. I haven't heard of pension holidays in probably 20 years.
They're illegal for PEPRA.
Yeah, exactly, and they should be. I think having come from San Diego and dealing with those issues, I'm a believer that pension fund systems should be closer to 100%. But I also recognize that we had a dip. We had some issues. We've made some corrective actions with obviously the PEPRA stuff. But now we're at a point now where we're like, hey, this had some adverse effects on recruiting and retention in the public safety realm. We need to come to the table and we need to look back and maybe make some changes that could be done on the local issues. And I think that's good governance. That's what government bodies are meant to do is to say, hey, this isn't some snapshot in time that's going to go on to perpetuity. This is something that needed to be done at that time. We weren't supportive of it and we disagreed with it. But here we are 14 years later, we're trying to fix it so we can deal with these recruiting and retention issues that are affecting our members right now as active peace officers. The overtime. How come the overtime doesn't count as a savings? If we can get more people in there, less overtime. It's just,
exactly.
Those things never materialize in any report that goes to the front of the legislature. And I hope when this ultimately gets to the governor's desk that he's willing to look at that and take that into consideration.
Yeah, the bottom line in the California Constitution, emphasizes quite clearly public safety. And this is how can we say that we're emphasizing public safety in this state if we're not prioritizing the staffing, the recruiting and retention of people in the police and fire services? It's just not. It doesn't add up. It's one of these things too. If you've been in this game long enough, where you see where people, when it's time for public safety, elected officials are out there banging drums about it, and then it's not. It's like, oh, well, we don't. We're not going to talk about it right now. It's like, well, this is the time where it's time to bang a drum and say, hey, we need this to be supported, and this issue to be addressed, because the staffing issue is still an issue. It's really still an issue. It has not gone away, and this is one of those things that's going to help lead towards that. And it's not some huge. It's not some huge overhaul. It's not It's nothing like SB 400. It's just these are not the same. These are false. That's a false equivalency. Yep. It's not in the same ballpark.
Yep, absolutely. I think we covered everything. I don't know if there's anything that we missed on that.
No, we're good.
All right. Well, this wraps up a conversation on the PEPRA problem and the path forward with AB 1383. I think the evidence is clear. Two-tier systems driving officers out and keeping new recruits away. AB 1383 doesn't repeal PEPRA's core fiscal safeguards. It modernizes them so California's public safety agencies can compete for talent again without bankrupting local governments. A 70-2 assembly vote shows this isn't a partisan fight. It's a public safety fight. The next steps are in the Senate, and the margin for error is gone. Check out our PEPRA report on our website, PORAC.org, PORAC.org, under the Research tab. If you're a PORAC member, you should have gotten a link to send a letter into our statewide elected leaders asking them to support 1383. Remember, stay engaged, talk to your legislature, share the report. The officers coming up behind us and the communities that depend on us are counting on this reform. I'm Brian Marvel. Ben Therriault and I will be back next time with more of what's happening with On the Job with PORAC, and I want to thank Randy Perry from Perry Strategies for coming in to talk about AB 1383. Stay safe and have a great day.